From the kitchen window of her mobile home in Auburn, Illinois, Ashley Aldridge had a clear view of the railroad crossing about 100 yards away. When the 19-year-old mother first saw the man in the wheelchair, she'd just finished feeding lunch to her 2 children, ages 1 and 3, and had moved on to washing the dishes, one more in an endless string of chores. Looking up, Aldridge noticed that the wheelchair wasn't moving. It was stuck between the tracks. The man was yelling for help as a motorcycle and 2 cars went by without stopping. Aldridge hurried out to ask a neighbour to watch her kids so she could go help. Then she heard the train horn and the clanging of the crossing gate as it came down, signalling that a train was on its way. She ran barefoot over a gravel path along the tracks. When she got to the man, the train was less than half a mile away, bearing down at about 80 miles an hour. Failing to dislodge the wheelchair, she wrapped her arms around the man's chest from behind and tried to lift him, but couldn't. As the train barreled toward them, she pulled with a mighty heave. She fell backwards, yanking him out of the chair. Within seconds, the train smashed the wheelchair, carrying fragments of steel and plastic half a mile up the track. The man Aldridge saved that afternoon in September 2015 was a complete stranger. Her unflinching determination to save him despite the threat to her own life sets her apart from many. Aldridge's heroic rescue is an example of what scientists call extreme altruism, selfless acts to help those unrelated to oneself at the risk of grave personal harm. Not surprisingly, many of these heroes, such as Roy Klein, an Israeli army major who jumped on a live grenade to save his men, work in professions in which endangering one's life to protect others is part of the job. But others are ordinary men and women, like Rick Best, Taliesin Namkai Mesh, and Micah Fletcher, who intervened to defend 2 young women, one wearing a hijab, from a man spewing anti-Muslim abuse at them on a commuter train in Portland, Oregon. All 3 were stabbed. Only Fletcher survived. Contrast these noble acts with the horrors that humans commit: murder, rape, kidnapping, torture. Consider the carnage perpetrated by the man who sprayed bullets from the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada, in October at a country music festival. 3 weeks later, officials put the casualty toll at 58 dead and 546 wounded. Or think about the chilling ruthlessness of a serial killer like Todd Colehep, a real estate agent in South Carolina who appears to have left clues about his murderous habit in bizarre online reviews for products, including a folding shovel. Keep in car for when you have to hide the bodies. In spite of how aberrant these horrors are, they occur often enough to remind us of a dark truth: humans are capable of unspeakable cruelty. Extreme altruists and psychopaths exemplify our best and worst instincts. On one end of the moral spectrum, sacrifice, generosity, and other ennobling traits that we recognize as good. On the other end, selfishness, violence, and destructive impulses that we see as evil. At the root of both types of behaviors, researchers say, is our evolutionary past. They hypothesize that humans, and many other species to a lesser degree, evolved the desire to help one another because cooperation within large social groups was essential to survival. But because groups had to compete for resources, the willingness to maim and possibly kill opponents was also crucial. We are the most social species on Earth, and we are also the most violent species on Earth, says Jean Desity, a social neurologist at the University of Chicago. We have 2 faces, because these 2 faces were important to survival. For centuries, the question of how good and evil originate and manifest in us was a matter of philosophical or religious debate. But in recent decades, researchers have made significant advances towards understanding the science of what drives good and evil. Both seem to be linked to a key emotional trait, empathy, which is an intrinsic ability of the brain to experience how another person is feeling. Researchers have found that empathy is the kindling that fires compassion in our hearts, impelling us to help others in distress. Studies also have traced violent, psychopathic, and antisocial behaviors to a lack of empathy, which appears to stem from impaired neural circuits. These new insights are laying the foundation for training regimes and treatment programs that aim to enhance the brain's empathic response.